All right. Welcome to the Atlanta Landlord Luncheon, guys. We're so glad to have you back this month as we get ready to talk about rehabs and got an awesome lineup for you today. But this is the Atlanta Landlord Luncheon. Our goal is to bring you monthly education, market updates, and networking events to help buy and hold real estate investors build long-term wealth in real estate. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and also on YouTube. You can just search the Atlanta Landlord Luncheon and find us on the platform of your preference. But we'd love for you to go ahead and follow the show so that we can continue to bring you these awesome updates. So we actually do have a great networking opportunity tonight with the Georgia REIA. So that's the Georgia Real Estate Investors Association. It's a really great nonprofit that brings investors together across Metro Atlanta. And tonight they have a big vendor fair. It'll be a big meeting. It's in Dunwoody. So you can just go on their website, georgiarea.com, and find out more information about that. But I will be there. So I'd love to connect with you in person if you're looking to get started in your real estate journey, or if you are interested in learning more about property management. So my name is Matt Martin with PMI Georgia. I'm joined by AJ Muldowney of Home Pro Solutions.
Hi, everybody.
All right. And Chip Cagle we'll go to in just a second. But at PMI Georgia, we manage almost 500 doors throughout Metro Atlanta. We specialize in single-family rentals as well as small multifamily. So you're welcome to check out our website, pmigeorgia.com. We'd love to talk with you if you're interested in getting started with a rental property. And we have more information to talk about today. But I'm going to hand it over to Chip. He's over at the Hobnob Tavern in Dunwoody.
Hey, everybody, I'm Chip Cagle, and as it says on the screen, I'm with Longhorn Investments. I think Matt said that too. So Longhorn is a hard money lender out of Dallas, Texas, but I'm right here in Atlanta to serve your needs. But I can represent you in any of the 10 states where we lend, major cities of those states. On our fix and flip loan, we do 100% of your purchase and rehab, as long as that's less than 70% of your appraised ARV. We can even go up to 75% if you get pre-approved for a rental refinance. Now, that doesn't mean you have to keep it as a rental. It just lets us know that if you did, we'd get paid off for our loan. So love to talk to you about that. Now, we do have a special going on right now. You have to get your application in before the end of this month. You can close it anytime during June. And then the interest rate, instead of being 12.99%, it's going to be a special 11.99%. So now's the time to get your loan started before that spring special ends. The other type of loan that we have is for new construction. On that, we don't do 100%, but we do 90% of both the lot purchase and the construction budget. If you already own the lot, we can lend you 90% of what you paid, and that could go towards the down payment on the construction costs. And if it offsets the full amount, then you are getting 100% of your construction costs. So give me a call at 404-216-5599, and we will discuss either one of those options for you. Maybe get you a pre-approval so you can send out a proof of funds letter to when you're making your offers. Thanks.
All right.
By the way, Matt, I am going to be at Georgia REIA tonight too, so I'll see you there, and people come by and see me there too.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much, Chip. All right. I'm going to hand it over to AJ. So AJ is with Home Pro Solutions. They are kind of our maintenance, rehab, and turns vendor here at PMI Georgia. I'm going to let AJ introduce himself because he's got a little bit of a slide for that. But AJ, one of the fastest growing segments of the landlord market right now is the accidental landlord. So it's a homeowner who is living in their primary residence. They have a great low interest rate loan. Maybe they can't quite sell for what they want, or they're thinking, hey, if I hold on to this for a few more years, I can continue building wealth. So as they relocate, they're holding on to their property and getting started and growing their first real estate investment. But what I'm realizing is a lot of these folks don't understand the costs that come into maintenance, preparing their property to get rent ready, what to expect at rehabs and tenant turns and all those things. So I've asked AJ if he could share a guide for us on what new landlords can expect, and also what maybe longtime landlords, if maybe you're looking to step up your game or really focus on rehabs and what you can plan for in the coming year. So AJ, I'll hand it over to you and let you go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt. As Matt said, I am AJ Muldowney, Director of Home Pro Solutions. Our goal is really to help facilitate property investors like yourself with their maintenance and turnover needs at their properties. We assist PMI Georgia with all of their needs in that regard, including inspections, maintenance work, make readies, getting second opinions, working with a lot of our other sister vendors to really make sure that we're driving the best price and the best solution for PMI Georgia's clients. I've been doing property management now. I've been in the property management space for about 8 years. I've been licensed real estate for about 7, and been in construction, general maintenance field for around 14. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, a lot of that inside of property management, of course, with my 8 years inside this industry. And during that time, I've learned a lot, and really what makes the most sense to really maximize your property and really get the most value out of your repairs, because that's really what we're driving. We want repairs to have a value towards your asset always, and sometimes that value is just getting it fixed and stopping the damage from happening to your property. But we always want to make sure whatever approach we're taking, that it's adding value and protecting your asset. So Matt kind of touched on some stuff that we were about, the accidental landlords that we're running into inside the property management space. And it's, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of homeowners. Like Matt was saying, you have a great interest rate, or, maybe you're moving for work, plan to relocate, really like the area, love the property. That is all a really great reasons to stay. Or, hey, you just said this makes sense to turn into a rental property, for whatever reason. But those are all great. We love the idea of building wealth through property ownership. So what we really have to consider whenever we're initially coming out into bring our property as a rental is that home ready to be a rental? We've lived in it. There's things that maybe we were okay with. Maybe we were fine with, the door rubbing against the rug. Maybe we were fine with, that cabinet that was a little bit loose. Maybe we didn't mind that there wasn't a stopper in the sink, or there wasn't a blind, on this one window. But that is not what our tenants are expecting. That's not what the tenant pool is looking for out there. Really, when we're trying to drive for good tenants that are going to take care of your property and stay at your property, we really want to provide them a good and desirable product to move into, because that's ultimately what we're turning your home into, is to a product, a commodity for the tenant pool to come in and stay and appreciate and use. So we want to provide that for them. So that's generally the main thing that I end up finding. Matt will have a talk with an owner. They'll say, hey, the house is great. And a majority of it is great. Paint looks fine. There's maybe a little bit of touch up here or there, but there's just those few odd and end things that we're bypassing.
Yeah.
That we just need to get in there and clean up. And sometimes there's bigger things, that we end up discovering. But we're going to talk about all that today, going through that discovery, what to expect at turns, when the key times are to identify things, and ways we can do value add to our properties during these times, or at our next turn, as well as little things that we can do to drive tenant retention. We're really big on tenant retention here at PMI Georgia. It definitely helps drive for a great return. And that's our goal, is to really maximize that ROI for you guys. So that's what we're going to dive into today.
Awesome. That sounds great. Well, yeah. So I think getting properties rent ready, that's something that a lot of new homeowners don't quite understand, that the standards are actually higher than maybe what they had been living in. But yeah, if you could walk us through, what it takes to get a property rent ready, and then we'll go from there.
Awesome. So one of the things that I always like to consider when we're looking at a property to make it rent ready is what do we need to do with a damaged item? Is it something that we need to repair, replace? This is something that I feel like a lot of the times, our mindset is, hey, let's be just cost effective right now and repair. And sometimes that is the right route. Sometimes, this is just, hey, let's be cost effective because that's how we always want to be with our repairs. But being cost effective sometimes makes us overlook future problems with just repairing and not replacing. So that's the big question I always like to ask myself whenever we're looking at something is does this call for repair or replacement? So we'll look at some key indicators. We'll look at how old is it? What is the life expectancy of this? What is the difference between the cost of repairing it or replacing it or updating it? And we'll take all these things into consideration, and we'll give our clients, PMI Georgia, their property managers, our professional opinion. They'll pass it along to their owners, and give both sides. But that's something you always need to consider when looking at your property is, hey, should or before starting an item, it isn't just, hey, should I repair it? Consider the replacement. Don't automatically bypass it. I feel like that's one thing that I see a lot of owners do, and it ends up costing them more in the long run.
What are some examples specifically that you're thinking about, repair, replace, some common items?
Yeah, so common items that I see for repair, replace, I would say is the disposal. Disposals, that, hey, it's just making a noise. Hey, is it just making a noise? Have we tried resetting it? Is it something that's happening common? Is it constantly flipping the breaker? Let's really sit down, troubleshoot, figure out what's going on. And if we find out that it's something that's actually damaged inside the disposal, let's not make this to where we're going to have a work order on it every 2 months, because that's not going to make sense.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of times new landlords might think, oh, it's cheaper to repair, but if it's an item where you're having to have a maintenance technician come back out again and again, that's going to cost you more in the long run than it would have been to just replace it.
Exactly. That Band-Aid just wearing off and peeling back instead of just coming in, doing what needs to be done properly to fix it, and getting out of there. Another common thing that I end up seeing is with plumbing. That we'll have somebody that just a previous owner or previous maintenance come through and just use like a shark bite connection to not really repair a connection properly. Instead of taking the time to really fix that plumbing properly, run a proper line and fix the issue. It's another 6-7 months down the road, boop, connection wasn't good. I had a shark bite that wasn't put on properly, didn't have enough of a connection to grab a hold, and it failed instead of taking that time. So we really, really try to make sure that if you're going to spend the money, that it's being spent smart.
Right.
And sometimes spending money smart means spending a little bit more. So we definitely look at those situations. And I'll tell you, I would say 60 to 75% of the time, it's repairable.
Right.
But it's that 25% of the time that you're not considering the replacement that ends up becoming costly for owners.
Right.
So we really like to take a step back, make sure that we're not missing that 25%. We really encourage investors to do that as well and to consider that. And look at the history If you tried repairing before, and hoping that would work, cool. If it continues to occur, I don't recommend continuing to do the Band-Aid.
Right.
It's just costing you more money. It's probably costing your tenant heartache, pain. It's going to mess with your tenant retention. And it's touching other dollars down the road that you're not considering just inside that maintenance expense.
Right. And I've heard you say tenant retention a few times. Maybe explain for a new landlord what tenant retention is and why that's really something to focus on.
Yes. Yeah. So tenant retention is basically retaining that tenant at the end of the lease, or sometimes through the life of the lease. We've seen situations where with maintenance, actually, where not handling it caused the tenant to want to break their lease early, and they lost that tenant, or not having them at lease renewal. I will tell you, and Matt will tell you all day, renewing a tenant, a good tenant that's paying on time, that's caring for your property, that's the name of this game. That is where you are going to make your most money and really always have steady cash flow, is if you can figure out how to really retain good tenants.
Right.
You're going to get minor increases to help keep you in the market. You don't have any lapse in rental income coming in. You also don't have to worry about a turnover. And the most expensive time for a rental property is vacancy.
Right.
So if you can avoid that, you're winning. And that's so tenant retention is a very, very key component to successful buy and hold real estate investing. And that's something that Matt and the PMI Georgia team really focus on whenever they're guiding their clients and their customers, as well as us at HomePro, when we're giving our recommendations to the PMI Georgia team, is always in mind of, hey, is this going to help with tenant retention as well? What makes sense in this regard? So yeah.
Right. Yeah. The number one cost you have or the biggest enemy you have as a landlord is days without revenue. So when there's not a renter in your property, you're having to pay for utilities, right? You're not getting revenue coming in to help pay the mortgage or whatever financing you have. So you want to limit that as much as possible, but it also costs you money to place a new tenant, right? There's tenant procurement fees, lease up fees, you might have to pay to get the property rent ready. And so if you can minimize the turnover, that will help you make the most money long term. So our average tenant stay here at PMI is 3 years, which is a really good track record. But when I talk to investors who have a lot of turnover in their properties, maybe each and every year, they're just eating into the potential cash flow that they could have had. Whereas if they had focused on keeping the tenant happy, and the number one complaint tenants have, landlord doesn't fix things. Landlord's not responsive to maintenance requests. So you definitely want to pay attention to these on the front end.
Without a doubt. Another real big key thing that about considering repairing or replacing is that life expectancy. I really like landlords to consider this. The seasoned investors will tell you, this buy and hold is a long-term game. So we're in this relationship, we're in this investment for the long term. With that being said, we need to consider that some of our major systems are going to have to be replaced. I think a lot of the times we generally keep our minds on flooring, paint, a couple of fixtures here and there. But we really also have to keep in mind our water heaters, our HVAC systems, our appliances, as well as the exterior paint, roofs. These are all things that we need to consider, keep in mind, be planning for, and be having a budget built around, and strategically being prepared to attack these items as they occur and as they approach our investment. It's not a if, it's a when. When it comes to these things, as homeowners, just in our regular homes, we know it's coming. You have a budget for your own personal home, hey, I just got this roof done 30 years ago. It's due for one. I was up there cleaning the gutters the other day, and I just kind of slid. So it's something that we really have to consider. We also have to consider that with our investment properties, and we need to budget for it. One thing that I really, really emphasize, and I love it when I'm seeing new investors come into the game and get excited, start approaching properties. But I feel like where they initially fail is kind of gathering all the information about their property.
Yeah.
Right. How old is my systems?
Right.
How old is my roof? Matt, you have discovery calls all the time. I'm just interested. I didn't pre-talk to them about this part. Is what percentage would you say of owners know all the numbers about their investment property right off the rip?
Probably zero. If you ask about a water heater, it's probably a coin toss if they actually know how old it is. But that's one you definitely want to pay attention to,
without a doubt. And a lot of the times, you have investors that have phenomenal property managers like PMI Georgia who are keeping up with this. But whenever you're initially approaching an investment, these are all key data points that I want to know. That I want to know while during due diligence. I want to know roof age. I want to know the age of the AC. I want to know the age of the water heater. I want to know the age of the appliances. I want to know the last time it was fully repainted. I want to get an idea of how old that carpet is, and I'm going to be running these numbers through my head. But after I'm done with that part, and I feel like most investors do that, right? Mm-hmm. What do they do with it afterwards? What do they do with it afterwards? We were so worried about it before we purchased.
Right.
We were so worried about it. What do we do with it? That data is important always for us to keep track of and to remember, because that is going to drive us kind of understanding the life expectancy, considering when we're going to do a repair or replacement,
right?
Understanding the system, understanding, hey, this has been 5 years old. It said in this disclosure that they had a repair done this time. These are all things that we want to remember and consider. Pass along this information to our property manager, right, if we have it.
Right.
But this isn't information that we're just going to gather, and then after the closing table and we've signed everything, that, well, it's just something to forget about. No, these were key data points that we wanted for a reason, and we're going to keep these data points and update them throughout the life of the ownership of this investment property.
Right, absolutely.
Because again, this is going to drive what should we be saving for? What should we be considering? Because if the maintenance call comes up or the turnover comes up, mm-hmm, these are the best times to fix it. We're already there.
Right.
We're already there. Right. So if we're already there, it's going to be more cost effective to handle it.
Right.
So
it's cheaper, mm-hmm, to plan to replace items as opposed to wait until the air conditioner goes out in July.
Exactly.
And there's a tenant really upset that their air conditioner doesn't work. And it's really emergency repair too. And summertime it gets really hot in Georgia. We need to get air conditioners replaced pretty quickly. But that's peak demand time for air conditioning companies, and it becomes a lot pricier to replace it at that time, right? So planning ahead on some of these things would save them money.
Planning ahead, and then also planning that life expectancy is an estimate,
right?
It's an estimate. It doesn't mean that that's what we're going to, that we're not going to have an issue prior,
right?
So being prepared to deal with that, being prepared to know that, hey, I may have a maintenance situation that may take away the cash flow for this month, and being prepared to handle that as an investor, or making sure that you have key partners in place to help you have the resources to handle those right, endeavors.
Right.
And that's another great reason to be at RIA tonight. You could meet great partners that you could talk to, great. There's hard money lenders, other lenders, a ton of resources out there, mm-hmm, for investors like you, including property management services. And I'll tell you, our portfolio managers as well as Matt, they work really, really hard to find resources and solutions for owners during those times. But the best resource is early preparation.
Right.
Is going ahead and being prepared, know that it's coming.
Right.
And just having that rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Because when it rains, it pours.
Right. Absolutely. And, I feel like a lot of times I see deferred maintenance items, like chip peeling paint on trim, siding. How might getting ahead of some of those items actually preserve and make these systems last longer?
Without a doubt, yes. So I'll tell you where I mainly see it is on when it comes to paint is the exterior. That's where I usually see that being the most costly for owners to not be prepared for, having a plan for, or be doing preventative maintenance to really stop it from getting bad. But if your exterior paint, as much as it makes the house look pretty, it is there for a reason. It is sealing those boards, our planks. It is protecting our home and stuff inside of it. So making sure that we go through and that we're keeping up with the exterior paint on the property is huge. I can't tell you how many times you run into a situation with rotten soffits, rotten fascia board, rotten siding that could have been avoided.
Right.
Definitely could have been avoided by just going through, keeping stuff painted, cleaning the gutters, the little things. And yes, this, paint for an exterior, depending on the size of your house and the type of the home and what repairs need to be done, can be a costly repair. But I can tell you what's a lot costlier is having to remove rot and replace that rot, as well as do the painting. So definitely like to budget for that and keep that in mind. This another deferred maintenance thing that I'll see a lot of the times is cleaning the vents. We see a lot of duct issues that just cause dust throughout the house. If we pull those vents back, pull those covers back, really suck up behind there, look over the unit, cleaning the condenser unit outside, making sure that the condenser unit's staying clean. Also, the smallest thing, changing that AC filter. We're good at it, about it at our homes, or we like to think that we are, once we finally look up and see a little bit of dust on the vent. But it is something that needs to be on a schedule, and you need to consider, hey, do I have a lot of animals? Is it dusty outside? Things that are going to cause us to want to change our filters a little bit more frequently. But we definitely have to stay on top of the deferred maintenance, because if we don't, it turns into something bigger. It always does. Right.
Those things start to deteriorate over time. And instead of just a repaint, you're having to replace siding, fascia boards. And some of these items aren't that costly to replace, but waiting for them to go out can be really expensive. Tell me about hot water heaters.
Yes. So with water heaters, the one thing that we find is that generally most owners aren't doing any preventative maintenance on their water heaters. One of the things that I always like tell owners to consider doing is just simply flushing the system. It's quite easy. You can find a YouTube video now. A lot of the times we do it, but it helps get a ton of sediment out of the water heater. Really helps the system last. We like to do it at every turn. It doesn't take long. It's something that we don't even really add onto the scopes, because it's literally just putting a hose on there and letting everything drain. But it is very simple to do. Cleans the sediment out of the tank. And it stops that sediment for going through your house. Flowing through the water heater. That does a ton for your plumbing, your fixtures. And that's a really, really simple way to extenuate the life of the water heater. Right now, you're looking at 10-year life expectancy on all water heaters. You know,
what happens when water heaters fail?
When water heaters fail, there's usually a lot of water.
Yeah.
There's usually a lot of water. But also, sometimes depending on the age of your house, not only do you have the water issue to deal with, you have the code issues that bringing everything back up to code. That's a cost that I feel like a lot of owners aren't usually ready for. They say, oh well, the water heater is $800 at Home Depot, and it's like, well, you also need an expansion tank. We also need to, whoever put this plumbing in here, it's not really ran the proper way. We need to reroute it this way. Or hey, now you need a bigger tank for your house because you did turn it into a rental property, and you expanded and turned this into another bedroom. And there's always little things to consider whenever doing those replacements. But I always suggest flushing that system at a tenant turnover. It's simple, easy to do, great way to save not just your water heater, but also the fixtures throughout the home.
Right. And replacing the water heater, we had a water heater rupture at our house. I didn't know much about it at the time, but we found it, that's a pretty extensive water damage, insurance claim. It can be a real nightmare. So, once you start hitting the life expectancy on a water heater, prepare for a replacement. It's not that expensive. Would you say $1,500, $2,000?
Yeah, I would say generally depending on the size. Of course, sizes matter, and then type. Right. You're looking anywhere from $1,375, I would say, to $1,650. Usually, if you need upgrades and things brought up to code, that's when I could see you hitting more around the $1,800, $2,000 mark. Right. And then, of course, if you did have water damage prior, a lot of the times, luckily, we have here at PMI Georgia has an emergency line that comes to Home Pro Solutions. We act as an emergency vendor for them, and a lot of times our tenants are very responsive. They get in touch with us, and we're able to get out there before the water gets too bad, or at least instruct them on how to shut the water off as we're on their way out there. But yes, that is one of the major ones we always want to watch is the water heater. The other one Matt had kind of brought up earlier with the summer months coming, condenser unit, AC. That's usually one of the other costlier repairs for owners that we see, and as that time's arising, we highly encourage owners, if you don't have a property manager that's working on your behalf, that you guys reach out to your tenants around these times. You're sending them something stressing the importance of changing their filter, keeping the area around the condenser unit clean from shrubberies so it can breathe, making sure that the condensation line that's outside is not blocked, doesn't have anything filling it up. Whenever they are checking the filter upstairs, that they look at the pan, they look at the lines, make sure that they're insulated. Ask for a photo, go out there yourself, schedule a time to go out there and look at your unit and really make sure that everything that you can do or instruct your tenants to do to prevent your AC from failing, that you're going out there and doing. And that could be simply making sure that the lines are properly insulated and covered. It could be you going by and noticing that the condenser unit is dirty because of dust and mowing, and you getting a condenser cleaner and going out there and spraying it, and then rinsing it off. It could be taking off and looking at the coils and making sure that your coils on the pump up in the attic are not covered in dust and debris. Looking at your condensation line on your HVAC system and clearing that out, or hiring a professional company like Home Pro Solutions or a HVAC technician to go out and service that unit for you. It's not money wasted. I will tell you that right now. That preventative maintenance is crucial. That is a very expensive system for your property, and it's something that needs to be cared for with care. So definitely don't underestimate that. If you're not sure what your property manager's process and procedure is for that, reach out. If you're interested to know more about what a good process and procedure is on that, reach out to Matt here at PMI Georgia. He'd be happy to talk with you, or get you linked up with me so that we can discuss it more, and how PMI Georgia and what we do to help prevent things like this.
Right. So when you walk a property for either a new onboarding inspection, rent ready inspection, you're checking for all of these things, looking at the life expectancy, the condition. What are some things, like I see carpeting mentioned on there. What are some things where maybe a new landlord might not be understanding about how often things should be replaced?
Yes, the one thing that I see a lot is with interior paint as well. We talked about the exterior paint, the damage that can be caused from not keeping up with exterior paint. Let's talk about the damage that can be caused by not picking up interior paint. Touch-ups are great. If I can touch up a home and save an owner money and it's going to look right and look good, I am all for it. Because again, the name of the game is making sure that the clients at PMI Georgia have repairs that make sense and that are cost effective. Because if PMI Georgia's clients are making money, they're getting more clients, which in turn is getting Home Pro more clients. So that's what we really strive. We all have a very clear plan to work in the best interest of the investor in this mindset. But sometimes touch-up paint has been touched up too many times. Right. I mean, you can touch up paint the death out of a house to where all of a sudden a 12 by 12 room is now an 11 by 11, it seems like. The walls have definitely been caked on. So sometimes it makes sense for a full repaint. And I do see owners sometimes pull back on that because it is generally costly part in a turnover. Also around the life expectancy of paint, we're seeing the life expectancy of flooring generally come up at that time. So, you're looking between the two of them at like $8,000 to $10,000 in costs, just to address it. And granted, depending on the square footage of the home, but I would say on average around $8,000 to $10,000 with both having to deal with flooring and full repainting. And when we're saying full repainting, we're talking floor to ceiling inside. So all the trim, all the walls, all the doors, the ceilings, everywhere, window sills. So that is very crucial. But I think what owners are seeing is they're seeing that price tag, right? They're saying, oh, that's $10,000.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, we're vacant right now. We just had a tenant move out. We had a 4-year tenant. You were able to hold retention. But these items have reached their life expectancy. There was some normal wear and tear, maybe a little excessive wear and tear, from a TV mount or something like that when they were trying to take it off. But for the most part, normal wear and tear on the paint and the walls for the 5 years.
And wear and tear is like smudge marks along walls, hallways.
Right, a scuff here or there.
Door.
Something that's generally going to happen with just living in the home. It's not the, fist through the wall. That we all get angry, but there's punching bags for that, not drywall. So, but there's that difference. There's a difference between normal wear and tear, and so what we have to consider is that, hey, after 5 years, this property's had its life expectancy. The normal wear and tear is on paint per guidelines is 5 years. So, this expense is going to be yours, generally for that and the flooring, unless we just find something that was excessive, seemed out of malice, or just ignored, that could have been prevented. It's going to be an owner cost. So I really encourage owners to consider that investment, because what are we doing? We're vacant. We say we do the turn, a normal turn from move out. If we get a rehab scope sent over to you guys, get it approved. We've defined what work we're doing. You fund it. I would say the timeline and the goal is always to have the home back on the market, ready for a move in within 10 to 15 days.
Right.
And
that really is the goal when you're talking about repaint and flooring, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of times landlords might think, oh, that's just cosmetic. However, when you're going back on the market, especially the market right now where there's a lot of inventory, private equity, Wall Street has come in and bought up a lot of properties in Metro Atlanta. They're doing full repaint, new flooring in their properties. And so your property is going to be competing for a new tenant. Those renters are shopping, they're touring multiple places. And so when it comes to having nice paint and flooring, that is going to save you time and money ultimately because it'll be less time on the market. It will attract a better type of tenant who really values a clean property and in good shape because they are then going to take care of your property, right? But when you put your property on the market and the paint is a disaster and the carpet has, wear marks and stains all over it, and you've tried to steam clean it twice, but it just doesn't come up. A tenant's going to walk in and then walk right out. And so that does end up costing you. And the only way to incentivize that prospective tenant is to lower the price below the other properties that you've been competing with. So these really are, in thinking about a business and thinking about it as investing in your business, probably every 5 years you'd say full repaint, replacing carpeting
if you're still going with the carpeting. We're seeing a lot of owners, because of the 5 years, want to convert over to LVP.
Okay.
And a lot of stuff that does have a little bit more of an upfront cost, but they're just having kind of cutting that out of their budget, and making it not as often of an occurrence. And granted, sometimes we have carpet that goes over the 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a really, really good general rule to follow. It's the HUD guideline, so it's also going to go off of how your property managers should be rectifying the security deposit with your tenant. So just consider, those funds and how they will be dispersed, and depreciated throughout that time period, and prepare to save in that regard. The other thing that I always love about going ahead and doing it, and it's not something Matt touched on that, but is also helps drive with that retention, with that tenant retention. Right. They come in, hey, it's new paint, it's brand new flooring. They're saying this is a place where I could settle, right, where I could settle in, and call home. And that's what we want. We don't want to have that pit stop for them, and if we make the house look like a pit stop, that's all it's going to be.
Right.
It's just going to be that waiting ground,
year, I gotta go,
and then move out, and we're back in that same situation where we need the tough up paint. The flooring still, and what did we do? Maybe we didn't get the cash flow we wanted because we had to lower a little bit, and we were vacant for 90 days.
Right.
So we didn't win. We lost money in that scenario.
Right.
So really, really good things to consider and be preparing for.
Yeah. All right.
Opportunities to prepare and repair. These, to me, are your 4 best times to be able to prepare and repair. The initial property condition inspection, as we were discussing earlier, this is where you're initially gathering all of our data. We can really get a good scope, come up with some general timelines to be expecting, and come up with some plans and identify what's an issue now and what we need to tackle. At a maintenance visit, this is a great time to consider prepare or repair. Mm-hmm. We may have a repair, and because of this repair, we're preparing for something else.
Right.
Let me give you a scenario. We have a tenant who's at the end of their lease. They're moving out in a month, and they have a leaking outside hose bib, and and we find that, they're not using it, but they noticed it was leaking. So for the meanwhile, we go out, we identify what's the issue. Okay, we really need to take the siding off, do this, but we're about to have a turnover. It'd probably be more cost effective to do it then when we have everybody else out at the property doing other repairs at the property. We're just going to go ahead and put a stopper on this right now and stub it off so that the leak's not happening anymore. But we fix the issue, but we're preparing for the fix. Another great time to do that is the tenant property condition inspection. Here at PMI Georgia, they require a tenant property condition inspection prior to a tenant's lease renewal. And this is done with the tenant in place. So a technician goes to the property, they're inspecting with the tenant's belongings in the home just to kind of see what's going on. And you can't see everything because the tenant's belongings are in the home, but you can get a really good general idea of what's going on in the home, and really get an idea of what things may be an issue or things that you may want to address. These may be things that you want to address once the tenant leaves. They may be something that you want to address prior to the tenant leaves. These may be something, which we'll dive into a little bit more in a second, that we want to fix to keep the tenant or offer as an incentive for a rental increase. This is a great time, again, to identify, prepare for repair. And then, of course, the move-out inspection. Move-out inspection and your initial property condition inspection are the best times to identify. They are going to be the best and most cost-effective times to identify because the home is vacant. That means vendors don't have to schedule. They can get in, get work done, making it more cost effective. We don't have a disruption for the tenant. More cost effective. If there's multiple items that need to be repaired instead of one-offs items, more cost effective. So these two areas, that initial property and the move out, are when we really want to try to identify as much as we can and repair everything possible and or replace everything possible that needs to be done, because these are going to be our most cost-effective times.
Right. Awesome.
Going back just a little bit to preventative maintenance, we were talking about flushing the water heater to remove sediment. Again, just like with the condenser unit and our heat pumps for our HVAC systems, water heater, we want to make sure that those lines are properly insulated. Simple, cost-effective, or cheap solution to really just help your property not have its worst enemy, which is water. Water is your home's worst enemy if you didn't know. Now you know. You can't say nobody ever told you. HVAC, of course, we talked about regularly changing the filter, clearing that condensate line, and inspecting the compressor. These are all quick, easy, simple things that we can do when we're checking out a property. Take 10 minutes to handle all of these items that I just listed. Plumbing, clean drains. You can use baking soda, vinegar mixes, some that aren't necessarily harsh chemicals on your plumbing to clear clogs, clear lines. Check for leaks. I'm telling you, check for leaks.
Right.
Check. Best way to check for leaks that I like to do is turn everything off, take a picture of the water meter, walk around, inspect a bunch of other stuff for a little while, come back about 20, 30 minutes later, see if that thing moved the slightest bit. If it did, I know I got a leak somewhere.
Right.
Quick little easy thing to do, not killing your time. You could be doing something else while this is running. Simple picture of the water meter. Check your water pressure. Make sure your water pressure is not too high or too low at your property. If the pressure is too high, it's going to be hard on your fixtures. So quick pressure check, easy to do. Test your shutoff valves. Make sure they work. If you're trying to tell your tenant, hey, the shutoff valve's over here, and they go to shut it off and it ain't working, then that's going to not be great. Right. And then flooring. This is something that I think every owner should really consider, especially our accidental landlords, or if you're converting your home over, that can really help with your flooring. Offering annual carpet cleanings at renewal for your tenants. Yeah, it's not going to be the full room, but guess what? You're hitting their track mark areas. You're hitting their high traffic areas. Everywhere else, there's furniture. So offering that, it's a great way for tenant retention. It's a great way to ensure that the carpet's getting cleaned. And it's also another chance for somebody to have some eyes inside your property. And again, that it's helping add to the life of a very expensive, an expensive cost that's going to come.
Yeah.
Also, stretching and tucking carpet when needed. That little hump that's in the carpet, stretch it. Because people get snagged on it. One, it's a liability, but two, it can cause further damage to that flooring, tears, rips, further damage. Making sure that the doors are properly adjusted and not rubbing up against your flooring. That's something that I see a ton that just wears out carpet, and there's simple fix. And also thresholds. Making sure that your thresholds are secured at the door. If you have LVP, stuff like that, that's where we end up seeing these chips, these pull-ups on the LVP is at these thresholds. So just making sure that those are secure and down. Right. And again, that also avoids a tripping hazard liability.
Right. Absolutely.
What to check? Everything. But what is everything? Just general interior and exterior. So again, just walk around. I like to, when I walk a house, I go clockwise through the house, and I start sealing the floor, and I just start working around, and I just look for anything that is out of sort, and that's the first thing I do in a room, and then I move from there to lighting, to outlets, to windows, to doors, to walls, to trim. But walk in and take that second, that pause, and look the room from top to bottom. A lot of the times you will see the defects, you will see the issues, and you'll be able to get them taken care of. Appliances, make sure they're running. That's something a lot of the times that is a simple way to avoid a work order, to avoid an annoyed tenant right at a move-in, is just making sure that all the appliances are running. They just moved in. They want to wash their dishes. They want to cook a meal. They want to take a shower.
Right.
Let's make sure those are working.
And they paid a lot of money to move in, and so they expect everything to work. So
not just was it the security deposit and first month's rent, it was the moving truck, maybe movers, a day off of work, a ton of stuff. Plumbing, we already touched on. Safety and security. Windows, do the windows open?
And lock.
Does the front and back door secure properly? Does the sliding glass door secure properly? Is there security bars on the window to where if there was a fire that the tenant couldn't get out? These are the things we really want to look over and consider when getting our property rent ready. Landscaping, windows, again, huge on windows. Making sure they open and shut is humongous for you guys. Doors, technology. What tech are we going to have in there? Does it make sense to have the tech? That is something that I highly encourage you guys to talk to your portfolio or to your property management team before adding any tech to your properties. It is becoming a hot commodity that we're seeing inside the market, but there's definitely ways to go about it, and things that we have found make more sense and other things that don't make more sense inside the tenant pool. So I would definitely reach out to your property managers, ask their advice about any smart home features that you're thinking or considering doing for the property. So what we're finding at turnovers generally between, a 2-year tenant is turnover costs. So when I say turnover, I'm strictly going to be talking about the rehab, the make ready right now. I'm not going to be talking about rent or utilities or grass or anything. Just what do we need to do to the property to get it rent ready again? We're seeing that to be between 2,500 and 5,500 on average. I'll tell you, I just had one yesterday, or sorry, not yesterday. It's already the 20th or the 19th. On the around the 5th when we were doing move outs, that was $500. That's all the rehab was.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, literally, we took advertising pictures that day. We just needed to get a steam cleaner in there and a little bit of a general clean done to the house. So, I mean, we've seen where you have great tenant and lease coordinating being done, and the home is completely good, and it just needs a fraction of this. And then we see sometimes where we're above this 5,500, 2,500. Sometimes that's because of the deferred maintenance. We did a touch-up paint last time. We didn't replace the flooring because it was only 3 years old, and we could just steam clean it that time, which was fine and well. And we had another great tenant, but now it's time to pay the piper.
Right.
That time did come.
And I guess some of this depends too on the length that the tenant was in there, right? So
Yes.
if a family of 5 was in there for 4 years, there's going to be a lot more wear and tear. You're probably looking at that interior repaint. If there's flooring that needs to be replaced,
without a doubt. And you'll see that Matt is really good about sharing the slide decks, or you go back and go back to the slide of the life expectancy later on when you guys are rewatching this video. That and in there it says, hey, family between elderly, and the life expectancy, and you do kind of get a little bit longer life expectancy out of elder instead of family. But yeah, the type of tenant, how long they were in there. Also, I'll tell you, if you'll go back to that far slide, Matt, these 4 things, though, you're going to generally see no matter if they were there 6 months or 4 years.
Right.
You're generally going to have a little bit of touch-up paint. A little bit of touch-up paint. There will be the exceptions, like I said, with that one that we had on the 5th. But, I mean, generally there's going to be touch-up paint. You're always going to have a little bit of cleaning. With cleaning, it's not it has to be clean.
We're not just talking about wiping down counters,
not broom clean.
Cleaning inside cabinets, cleaning the fridge, all the nooks and crannies, cleaning ovens, dishwasher, deep cleans. I like to tell our clients that really we want to be cleaning for that woman. You think of your mom, your wife, your girlfriend. When she's touring a property, she opens the fridge, looks at the oven. There's going to be an ick factor right away if those are not clean, and that's going to influence how that property feels for them. Now, some tenants might come in and put a little of their own elbow grease, but that's not really setting it up for the expectations that you have of how you want to maintain the property, and your expectations when the tenant leaves the property.
And that's the perfect verbiage, is setting the expectation. Setting the expectation. One, we're setting the expectation of how we expect the property to be kept and maintained. But 2, we're setting that expectation for kind of the tenant, right? Like if somebody's going to accept this place and it's ran down, it's dirty and nasty, what kind of tenant are we really procuring here? Right. And how are they going to take care of the asset? Probably they're going to assume that you don't really care, so why should they? Right. So I'm really, really big on what Matt was just saying on you setting the tone. Right. As the owner, the product that you present, you're setting that expectation, and your portfolio manager should be leading you in that direction.
Right. And ultimately, that investment, that money you put in at turns, at rehab, throughout maintenance, that will save you money and make you more money by keeping tenants in place, by having less days on market when you're back up for advertising. I spent a lot of time on Zillow doing market analysis, and you can see how long a listing has been up. And those older rundown properties, especially right now, renters are just passing them over and they sit on the market a long time. If you think about every day your property is not rented, it's probably costing you $60 a day or more, in lost potential revenue. So definitely want to minimize vacancy as much as possible, and doing proper tenant turns, rehabs, investing in your asset to maintain it, to preserve its value, but also the utility it has as a rental property. Well, cool. Well, AJ, we're coming up almost out of time now. Any final parting words that you would like to share with the accidental landlords, or maybe landlords who've been at it a while and are wanting to step up their game?
Yeah, if you'll go over for me a little bit, Matt, what can we do to add value? That's the one thing that I really want the mindset to be right now for our seasoned investors, to our accidental landlords, and really what we need to consider is our financial and strategic situation that we're in right now. Local market research, like Matt was saying, go through, look at Zillow, look at Redfin, walk around, see what your active competition is doing and what that market is putting out for the tenant pool. Tenant feedback, if you've had previous tenants, know what they're looking, what they're expecting, what their issue was, see if you can find a solution for that. And then timing and disruption. Sometimes we want to do a value add for retention. So consider, hey, the timing of when this should happen, how is it going to disrupt the tenant, and what makes the most sense, and is going to be the most cost effective. And then over there to the right, I just have some affordable ideas to add value to your rental property, such as light fixtures, updating knobs on vanities, kitchen cabinetry, replace handles and bathroom fixtures, having a storage solution for your potential tenants, and replacing the carpet with LVP or engineered hardwood. These are all things that we're seeing throughout the market. And of course, the handles might be cheaper than the LVP, but little things like that, that's going to catch tenants' eyes. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the little things right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We list and rent a lot of properties every month. And it is really interesting to see how consistent paint affects how quickly a property gets rented, and the right paint color, right? So sometimes when homeowners are putting their property on the market, they might have had that lime green bathroom that they love, right? But renters don't really love the lime green bathroom, or the bedrooms were all painted your kids' favorite colors. But having a consistent paint, but even like a newer grays, updating the aesthetic of the home, and as AJ said, with replacing light fixtures, that can really make a house pop in a lot of ways. Just going through replacing light fixtures, upgrading them to something that's a little bit more modern and current.
You'd be so surprised how much replacing a doorknob does to the look of your door.
Right.
Going from, brushed nickel to a black, or from gold to brushed, it does so much.
Right.
And you don't notice it until you do it. And it's like, wow.
Right. So. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Those are good ideas to be thinking about as you're preparing for a repaint, things like that, updating the painting, the colors, things like that as well. Yeah, that's great. What about putting in a pool? Is that a good upgrade?
Not for rental property, or for your own property, unless you like doing a ton of work. If you can afford a pool, boy, get a pool.
Yeah. So not all upgrades will equate to rental income. Sometimes those things are just significant maintenance hogs, and it's going to cost you more. You might love having a hot tub, but maybe not for a rental property.
You know what you do?
Unless you're in an Airbnb space or something.
You know what you do? You go over to Chip, you get a loan for a new construction lot that's got an HOA with a great pool, a great hot tub, and you get that going, and let the HOA deal with that nonsense, but you can still offer it.
Yeah,
I think that's the best option.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just keep that in mind as you're thinking about what adds value. Not everything that would add value if you were living there is great for a rental property. But yeah, AJ, this has been really helpful. A lot of great information to think about. It also just seems like this could be really overwhelming for new landlords as they're thinking about. I try not to overwhelm them too much or hit them with too much. If they have more questions, what's a way that they can connect with you or find out more information?
Yes, definitely. If you want to connect with me, if you have some more questions, please feel free to reach me at our office here at PMI Georgia. You can reach me via email at aj@pmiga.com. You can also get in touch with Matt. Talk with Matt kind of about your current scenario, what you're looking to accomplish. He's really great at that. He could definitely get you connected with me as well. Another great way to get in touch with me is to go on our website at pmiga.com. Fill out an owner inquiry, and put in there. There's some questionnaires you could definitely say would love to talk with Matt or AJ. Matt would definitely get that over to me. We'll get connected, and I'd be happy to help you guys any way that I possibly can.
Yeah, we do actually have a lot of great calculators on our website too. So we have, you can request a free rental analysis for your property if you're debating on whether to rent or sell. There is a rent or sell calculator on there. You can try to plug the numbers in, see if that works. And then, there's a lot of blogs and information on our website at PMI Georgia. If you want to jump on there and further your education. I guess that will wrap it up for us for now. Would love to see you at Georgia REIA tonight. AJ, thank you for being with us.
Yes.
Chip, any final words?
Hey, that was a great presentation. I appreciate both of you all doing this for us, and a lot of great information. I think that was a good one for landlords. All right. So, yeah, Matt, I'll see you tonight, and hope some of our listeners can come to the Georgia REIA event tonight, and we'll meet you in person.
All right. That
Our next
sounds
meeting will be on June 16th. And please come out if you're in the Atlanta area. Please come out to Hobnob Tavern so you can network with other real estate investors and enjoy a nice meal. They just added a lunch menu, so things are a little more affordable now at lunchtime.
all
All
right.
right. So
Awesome.
hope to see you soon.
All right. Thanks for joining, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.